All righty. Hi, everybody. I appreciate you amazing people for coming in here. You're my steady, constant, awesome folks. So it's definitely appreciated. I got Mandisa today. Robert couldn't come. Cynthia couldn't come. Maya couldn't come. And Will be in here in a few minutes. So we'll just see if anybody else wants to jump in later or whatever. And of course, if any of you have anything to say, I'll throw a link out there if anybody wants to throw their opinions out or what they've experienced or whatever, because equality is equality. Mandisa, she is with Black Non-Believers. Oh, yeah, that's right behind you.
Yeah.
And what position do you hold there, just so everybody knows?
Well, I'm the founder and president. Still a volunteer organization. It's growing, but yes, I am I guess I am the head honcho here.
Nice. That's great. I mean, isn't that everybody's dream to be able to do something good, make productive steps in life and to do what you love.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been 10 years and it's been an interesting journey, and I just really felt like once I threw myself into this movement, there was no going back. So, just all in, for just all in, and now now here we are. So, yeah.
Right. And the one thing about starting up your own stuff is it's not a full-time job, it's a full-time job,
Oh,
because you
yes.
end up doing you're working from home. You end up
Yes.
doing it all the time.
Yes, and I'm so glad that I have experience in being, an executive assistant as well as a manager in hospitality, because there are a lot of things that I don't have to outsource. So there are a
Right.
lot of things that I do myself. I mean, of course, I have folks that help out and such, but for the most part, everything that happens is, that's me
Yeah.
behind the scenes and working and connecting and engaging folks. So, it's almost
Absolutely.
a one person show, but yes.
That's amazing. I tell you, I mean, I've just done, like, I had a couple painting companies, and the first time I was with my ex doing it, and that's why that dissolved, because the relationship dissolved. And then the second time I did it myself, and even with oh, there's Will. Thank you, Will.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you.
No worries, no worries. My
I
kids
love
have.
this guy. He's got such a good attitude too, man.
Yeah.
I just
Hey.
love this guy.
Honestly, I think life is attitude, so I try to have a positive attitude, because if I walk around bitter, bad things are going to happen, and
Yeah, negativity breeds negativity.
that's
Absolutely.
not even woo woo. Like, people if you're mad, you're going to seem mad all the time,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
trust me,
Absolutely.
I get angry, I get heated,
Oh,
but
hell yeah, we all do.
Mhm.
We all do. So you guys know a little bit about Mandisa now. I'm sure everybody knows that Will lives in LA. Pretty much the epitome of this big city, and there's lots of shit going on and lots of discrimination, because every big city has it.
it's unreal here. It's unreal.
Yeah, I bet it is. I
Yeah,
bet it is.
people think of LA as being just this big melting pot, which I'm sure it is. Just like New York is where I'm from, it's a huge melting pot, but there's all sorts of tensions out, there, and and a whole sordid history of racial discrimination and just,
Forced
yeah,
segregation as well.
yes, definitely segregate. Yes.
Yeah.
And even here in LA, I don't know who gets paid, but it's big money to pit Hispanic people against Black people. So
Mm.
there's that tension as well. Not as much as it was 20 years ago. It was so bad, people were shooting each other. It was like, oh, you stay on this side of town, I'll stay on this side of town. But I think what happened is everybody's kind of broke, so people had to come together.
Yeah.
We have no choice. And at least in Los Angeles, I always jokingly say that the police don't care. they'll indiscriminately take you out, whether you're white, black, like, but it's
Really?
bad. Oh, it's
Mm.
bad here. But the problem is we've created a class. Our police officers think they're the ruling class.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so because of that, there's a separation. And so there's a real us versus them. And so our sheriffs are different than even the LAPD, than even the highway patrol. Like our sheriffs, they're not allowed to talk to minors anymore. They legally can't speak to minors. That's how much drama they've had with children in general.
Well, that's
Wow.
good. I mean, yes, yes.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that is good though. Absolutely. I mean, if they're using their position, to not do good things, then yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
regulate
'cause
them. That's
I
the
know
problem we have. It
yeah,
doesn't
the
happen
prison
enough.
pipeline, especially with young boys, was especially horrendous in the LA area. So,
In
yeah.
we have more we always joke how like, oh, they're building another jail, they're building another prison. It is big business out here. Big. Our federal prison system, it created a lot of the gangs that we know of today. It's created a lot of the problems. And in LA, it's so bad that if you go to jail, you get segregated by your race.
Mm,
Because it is that bad. And in a way, they have to protect people who can't defend themselves. They have to. So it's
Yeah.
like I always say, I've surrounded myself with positive people. I've allowed positive people in my life. I have a special needs son. I can't just be around anybody, So I always joke about how LA's a utopia, but you kind of have to make it that way. You have to have your own infrastructure. It's sad. We have to protect ourselves here, and like we'll call the fire department real quick, but like people are playing paper rock scissors to see who's going to call the cops half the time, because there's no point, depending
wow.
on the situation, But I try to be positive. They did defund the police here in LA though,
Oh, wow. Okay.
because we have an army here of no cop should have $500,000 worth of gear on and a tank. When you're in, like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
like they have it here in the I live in the burbs and they have better stuff than our military,
Mm.
and they're, so that I thought it was just people were just wolfing and saying things, but they actually did defund the sheriffs, at least, because they are the biggest problem right now,
So, from what you've seen, is it like a typical, like the sheriffs are all white kind of thing? Because most places I've
Yes.
lived, sheriffs, not the police, but the sheriffs, they're generally a bunch of good old boys.
And they're aging out. Because of our population, we do have Hispanic and black officers, but let's be real. Like KRS-One said it the best. Like, it's just the same. It's the same thing. I see. To be honest, I've been treated worse with Hispanic and black cops trying to prove to their buddies that they're tough.
That blue wall thing.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, you got that blue wall and unfortunately, and this goes to show that even though this definitely is a show about Black Lives Matter and equity and equality, it does go to show that power can corrupt no matter who you are.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I don't let black folks off the hook for that, and just simply because, our communities have dealt with these issues systemically and historically, it doesn't let us off the hook for some of the bad shit that some of us do.
I'm a bit more harsh because there's something about a sellout that needs to be called out. You be who you want, be bougie, be whatever you want, but don't sell out who you are. That's my thing. Like, that's my number one rule, And so recently I had a Hispanic cop that pulled me over, and basically on just dropping my son off, I got pulled over 4 times and it cost me 3,000. Basically I almost had $4,000 in tickets.
Oh my gosh.
And I went to the judge and I was like, if this isn't systemic racism, like, the guy knows my car, I wear a hat, like, you could spot me 10 miles away. I even did an experiment in my truck with a hat on, and he pulled me over and gave me a ticket. So I think like you were saying, it's the power, because he told me, he's like, oh, I'll see you in court. And I saw him in court and I got it taken away. And I was looking at him and he didn't want to look at me when we were in court. I was like, you were so tough. But I knew the law was on my side. Whether the judge was going to honor it or not was another subject. But they did,
Good.
And I think that it's an unaddressed issue that Jim Crow laws changed name. It's not like anything's changed. I've seen, and I'm not saying like, oh, it's bad as it was 70 years ago, but I lived in my ex-wife and I, we owned a home in a town called Lancaster. That's like, it's the other town over from where I live. Long story short, the cops would go to the area where African American people lived, and we lived in the same neighborhood. My ex-wife and I, we would sit in the front of our house and watch the cops just stop people and arrest them. And we considered it kidnapping after a while.
Right, absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
Because you're walking home from your job. You know what? Like, where I'm from, everybody smokes weed. It is not a secret. That's why they had to legalize it here. Because people were not stopping. They were not caring. Like, and even before weed was legalized, it was known, like, leave people alone. The cops stopped enforcing it because they couldn't, because everybody did it, And I've seen people go to jail over the same amount of weed I can go to the store and buy right now,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's one thing to have like a trash bag full, which I've seen before.
I've been to Oregon.
I think have a trash bag full of the back of your car. It's another thing to be like, you have your own little stash and you're going over to your buddies to hang out for the night and play video games. It's ridiculous.
And that's the one thing I try to convey, because for as positive as I am, like, I try to say, like, it is different. Even my son, I haven't said a word to him. He's seen it because he's been in the car when I've been pulled over, so damn, all they're doing is creating another generation that's gonna hate them. Because hate, it's not, I always say hate is the pathological descent into violence, but really, if I saw my father being treated like that, I wouldn't respect someone like that. I wouldn't. So it's just one of those things. Kids see it with their own two eyes.
It's true.
They can traumatize them. That kind of stuff is passed down. Like generational trauma, generational just that PTSD, that is, and instead of there being a mental health approach to what communities of color and the Black community has endured, it's been criminalized.
Very much so. Very much so.
So people who needed help for, it didn't matter that, people were struggling, or there might have been issues that prevented them from getting, from doing the things that they needed to do. It just didn't matter. People were thrown in jail, or, women were, there's a good Netflix documentary that came out on like the crack epidemic. And it got into the history, of course, in the 80s when it got really, really bad. But of course, it was the Black community in particular, and Black women, who were more criminalized than anything else.
I think I saw the same documentary.
Yeah. And being from New York, being from the hood, and kind of living this, living that experience, it brought back so many memories, and it's just like, wow, it really hits. It really does hit home, and it really does show that many of our realities are different. They really, really are.
You know what? It's so funny you would say that. That is the one thing I try to convey to people. That's the one thing I try to say is, like, I don't live your reality. So sometimes I'll say something and people are like, oh, this guy's a bit off. But it's because I come from a completely different world than other people, When I left this town, when I was 17, I was a bit of a Black nationalist.
Right.
I had drank the Kool-Aid of like Leo Muhammad, and like I wanted to be a 5%er.
Ooh.
Then I went out in the real world. And I discovered that it was just as BS as Catholicism was, or
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Oh, trust me. Yep. I was raised in the Black conscious community, the Black nationalist community, so I know exactly what you mean.
Reading the 120, studying the 520 right now. Reading the 120, like, to me, it was leaving one slaver and joining another.
Yeah.
You know. And honestly, I thank the 5%ers because they led me towards atheism.
Right.
Because it, like I said, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, you get just a bit more education. There's the path towards critical thinking and enlightenment, especially from, coming from very, very entrenched Christianity within the Black community.
Very much so.
And growing up alongside it was just very, very interesting to me, because I remember growing up not really fitting in, even within my own community, even though I had a big family, had a very interesting childhood, but I still felt othered because there was a bit more of an emphasis on education and being aware of what was going on, maybe a bit too aware. But, but I totally know, I know what you mean.
And
it still shocks me. I'm sorry to jump in, Pete, but it still shocks me.
No, you're fine, baby. Go ahead.
I want to say something. It still shocks me how people of color follow, and at least Americans follow Christianity.
I know, right?
Well, yeah, that's that is a thing.
Talking about slavery, and they're like, "Yep, I'm going to follow that guy." What? I don't even get that part. I really just don't. And that's Mandisa and I were talking about, people being prejudiced after they've had someone be prejudiced against them. And I was like, I don't understand how, like, I literally had a Black couple who were obviously Christian. They were at the place I worked. I stopped to get gas, and they had, the little fish, whatever symbol on the back of their car. And they gave me dirty looks. And I was like, "Hi, how are you today?" Because people stare at me. I start talking. "Hey, how's it going?" That's how I am.
I'm the same way.
Hell, I'm not going to duck away from it. If you want to have a conversation, I'll talk to your ass. So I was like, "How are you today?" And they were like, "You're going to hell, right?" The wife says this. And I was like,
"Whoa.
Wait a minute. Of all people, you're prejudiced against what? Someone else because they don't live exactly like you? Wow." She was like, me, and I just walked away after that. But I mean, I was like, seriously, guys, come on.
That assumes that all Black folks care about racial justice the same, and we all don't.
But they should.
Well, I mean, I do think that there needs to be an awareness that everyone needs to, and for everyone. Yes, there is more of, but again, that does, there's, when it comes to the conditioning of, and we're talking about a couple of centuries here.
I very much so. I consider it generational.
Yes, it is generational, and there's a pathology that is going to take a while to break. It is going to take a while to break, and it is unfortunate, right? But it's like we do what we can with those that we know are on the level. So, yep.
Well, that's like you guys are talking about kids, and I heard a long time ago someone said, children learn what they live, and they do. I grew up in a family, for instance, that was Catholic, but my mom preferred to talk about science, so she rarely talked about religion. I feel like she knew it conflicted and never said anything about it because you're not a science person and don't see something wrong there, So, but she always taught us to not judge people. I mean, I lived out in the backwoods area. It was all white redneck people. There was some KKK floating around, which is why I didn't come out sooner, because I knew they didn't like me either. Then we had this Black family came into church, and I was like, "Mom," she's like, "We'll talk about it later." I was like, "All right," because I was like 5. I'd never seen anybody with a dark tan. That's what it looked like to me. I just want to know why they had a dark tan. So we got out to the car, and I said, "Mom, those people," and she said, "They just have a better tan than we do." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yep, they're the same." And that was it. We never asked another question about it. Yep, they're the same, got a better tan. That was just the way it was. But it's
Well,
not always like that. You have grandparents that are still old school, or you have parents that are still handing down that crap, or you have
mhm.
black people who are still that, the parents and grandparents lived through a lot of racism. So they still
So
Yeah.
discuss that. That was an integral, huge part of their lives. And then the kids hear that and the kids are like, oh, people are racist.
very
Yeah.
much so.
So it,
My
I think there's a fine line between making your children aware and scaring them
Right.
and making them think
Absolutely.
everybody's against them. And it goes both ways. I grew up with white people that thought all black people hated them because we lived in an
Mm.
all white area. That's why there's no black people here. They hate us. And I was like, nah, dude, they just got a better tan. What's wrong with you? This is in high school. I didn't understand it.
It's also the old world mentality. My father, who died at 80 years old, used to always tell me that his grandmother, who lived to be 96 or 7, she was a born slave. She hated white people.
Yeah.
She absolutely didn't leave her side of town. His mother, when she died, she looked my dad in the eyes and said, bury my hate with me. Go live your
Oh,
life.
nice.
So
Yeah.
he lived his life from his mother's advice, because she knew she was part of the old world, because this was 1950s and 60s Georgia. They were part of the old
Oh,
world.
Yeah.
And my dad had gone to Nam and came back, and he was a different person, but he conveyed that in me was, and when he passed, I buried a lot of his hatred with him, because even this new world, like, he would look at the younger generation and be like, why aren't they like me? Why aren't they, he didn't realize the opportunities weren't there.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult, especially when people have lived, and this goes back to, the PTSD and the trauma from being, discriminated, not just discriminated against, but even terrorized in this country.
Oh,
That
oh
there
yeah,
are a lot of, you talk about the Klan. The Klan was a good old Christian organization.
still is.
Yeah, they still are a good old Christian organization, and it is very difficult. So I understand, where the older generations are coming from, but it takes a lot. It took a lot for your grandmother, and it took a lot for your dad to say that, because, and what that goes to show is that it doesn't matter what age you are, there is an opportunity to change and do something different if you really, really want to. So it isn't just up to the young people to do differently. The older generations can do it too. And I think that there's a disconnect there, because when people get older, I think so many older people forget what it was like when they were younger.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
and I think that there's a disconnect now with the civil rights generation, with this new era of activism, because it's like now, people aren't going to sit back and wait for solutions. People didn't sit back and wait for solutions back then, but
mhm.
it's like now people from the civil rights generation are trying to tell these, oh, you're doing it wrong. And it's like, wait, what?
Yep.
Like, hold
Yep.
up.
I start getting my gatekeeper's rule book. I said, do you know this person? Do you know this person? This person, See, but that's the problem though, is that even what you're saying, like, divide and conquer is real.
Yes, yeah.
When I was in high school, perfect example. The upper echelon, we called them the rich black children, didn't hang out with the middle class black children. We segregated ourselves,
Hmm.
because they had cars and nice shoes, and we had like pickup trucks and hand-me-downs from our parents.
Yeah, what was interesting is that one of my organizers and I were talking about this recently. Is that unspoken classism within the Black community.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like white people wouldn't even be able to to see that, but there is definitely a looking down upon those people, or those N words amongst Black. I'm not going.
No, I had to I
And
had to
right, yeah.
I had to check, like, for as much as I
I've
love my
seen that
dad,
everywhere.
I had to
I
check
Mm,
really
my
have.
I had to check my dad sometimes, because he had made it. And I'd tell him, like, you're lucky.
Right.
You know, there's especially because he was from the Nam generation, there were men his age and still that are still alive now. They're on the streets of LA. Every other black man that, because I work with an organization that's hand to hand with people on the streets. Like, we help people out, give them clothes, you know. But every other black man I meet over the age of 70 fought in Vietnam. And they're living on and this is not just black men, it's white men as well, but they're living on the streets of LA. They're living in bridges, you know, on the side of a freeway wall. We don't take care of our own. And I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about, like, if someone goes to a war, they should get some mental help and not, you know, and not have to struggle for the rest of their life, because they gave their life for you. And especially in this country, we ask the poorest of the poor to defend us.
Right. Especially if when they have no choice, because, you know, especially back in the days of, you know, legal segregation, you know, the legal Jim Crow, a lot of folks' way out was through the military.
Yep. My dad, one of my favorite stories, he would always say when his mom, Georgia was so bad, his mom signed him up when he was 17 in 1956. And so in 1957, 58, he was in boot camp, and he said when he got to boot camp, it was nothing but poor people. It wasn't white at that point. It wasn't black. They were all just dirt poor.
Well, that's what they do. The recruiters go out into poor areas and into ghettos and blah, blah, blah. And then they say, hey, we can get you out of here. I mean, that's what I did. Most of my family did that. I'm not, you know, just because I lived in all white, we were poor ass motherfuckers, which is why I never understood why my dad could say, if you weren't rich and white, I hate you. Because that's pretty much what he was.
Wow.
I was like, dude, you don't even pay for your own kids. How can you be like that? Like, you're a prick.
And you know what's interesting?
But that's what they do. They go out and they find poor people, and those are the people, the blue collar and below are the people that go out and fight for our country most of the time.
Absolutely.
You know, I was saying that, you know, one thing that I tend to say in my presentations is that white supremacy has hurt us all. It has hurt all of us, because actually, I think there are still more white people on public assistance and on welfare, you know, per capita, statistically, than anyone else.
And in the South. Sorry to co-sign.
No, there's a lot of poor white folks out there.
In the South. The South too.
And what's interesting is that these, you know, like I said, systemic racism has hurt us so bad to the point where people don't realize that a lot of us really are going through the same shit.
It's true.
Of us really are. But it's unfortunate that, you know, because like you said, hey, the Klan turned on white folks who they felt were, you know, were who they found were helping black folks or other communities of color. They turned on anyone who didn't.
They hate Jewish people too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's another you better be white thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely. And you had to be of, you know, this class or have this amount of money. So they really didn't care about the, you know, but they sent a lot of poor white folks to fight their battles by virtue of simply being white.
Absolutely.
You know, and I just think it's unfortunate that, you know, but systemically, because, you know, due to the aspects of, you know, simply because being darker was to be more hated, was to be more discriminated against, because you know, it kind of, you know, it really helped more white people, you know, feel better about the, you know, their condition, even though they're, you know, they might have been worse off than.
And I feel like a lot of that.
But yeah,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of that is unraveling nowadays too, because people, you know, I always say when Barack Obama left, one thing people realized is we had equality. Everyone was equally broke. And so people start looking around, and if you're not financially superior to somebody else, a lot of people lost their place in society in their head. And so we have a lot of disenfranchised white males over the age of 45 right now, who are out of work, who are, and they're being radicalized. Whether it's
Right.
Fox News, whether it's by their buddy who's just as angry, And on another note, something that makes me angry, how many black men and women voted for Donald Trump?
Yeah.
My God, you know what? Let me tell you.
There
I
were quite a
swear
few.
to
I was
God,
like, you
every
know
time I
what?
heard someone of any color, Hispanic, I don't give a shit, say, oh, I voted for Trump, or I love Trump, or they got a Trump sticker, I just want to go up and go, what is wrong with you?
So I've been blocked by 3 YouTubers. One that's our twin brothers, and I one night, I've learned discretion, but one night I let them have it on my keyboard. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was pulling out books, giving them references, like, and you call yourself Christian too. They blocked me permanently.
Good for you. Maybe you opened somebody's eyes up in the chat. That's why I'll go on to like Praise I Am and those guys, and I'll say shit in the chat. Not mean, just a different opinion. Or I'll throw out there something my brother said, because you might reach one person. And
I'm so glad
that's
you
better
said
than
that,
where we were yesterday. I'll take one.
because I did that again today with Little Light Studios. When I see a bunch of people talking about race and there's not a person of color, not one person of color there,
Dude, don't get me started.
I'm going to say something. And I know they saw it because it says godless sowing, and it was in a super Christian size. I know they saw me.
God.
And dude, I saw the dude go like kind of put his phone. I was like, okay, it is live. This is live. But I think it's important to get the word out, to say, hey, that's why on my other set, I have a ton of American flags, because it's like, no, I live here too. And people that look like me died so they could live here. Like, don't ever forget that. That's why I whenever I meet someone that has the name Robert Lee, I always I always ask them, how many people did you have fight in the Civil War? And they'll say, oh, one, or oh, I'm from Ohio. And I said, oh, I had 23 people in my family fight in the Civil War. Like, you're a poser. you're a poser. You got to remember.
Right.
I think sometimes I went overseas and people forget that people of color live in this country, and that we're not all stereotypes, and we don't all look the same.
Right.
We don't
Right.
all talk. It's not Charles Rantan, Edward Bojangles. We're not all. Sorry, I don't like those guys very. But we're not all minstrel shows, So it's important.
And the sad part is that those characters were played by white folks.
Mm-hmm.
Those were stereotypes made up by, and that's what made that movie, The Original Birth of a Nation, so dangerous. That's what made it so dangerous, was because, but it was easy. It was a scapegoat. It was a scapegoat for folks who were still living in the fantasy world of this white utopia. And it's like, what do you mean? Like that
That's why when
make any
people,
sense.
when I started seeing a lot of that Trump, when Trump started popping up, I think because I live in LA, I forget in a bubble, because white people are a minority here in LA, and I'm like, who the hell is voting for this guy? But it's people got radicalized. Like we said, it was African Americans. There was a lot of Hispanics in LA.
Yes, there were a lot of Hispanics, and it also goes to show how how classism runs in that community as well.
Also, a lot of people forget that Arizona is mainly Hispanic as well, and they passed SB 70, I believe it was, to kick out all illegal immigrants out of the state of Arizona, and isn't
that crazy?
That was a Hispanic majority voting to kick out people. And how can you decipher who's an illegal? How can you walk up to somebody like that? That's 1935. Let me see your papers.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Speaking of the Civil War, I'm going to put here in the chat, for anybody who's not seen this movie, it is an amazing movie, and it is based around all of the POC soldiers and what they went through during the Civil War, fighting for their own families and their own rights. And they were treated like garbage, and they didn't have uniforms, they didn't have shoes, they'd march for days barefoot in the winter, they'd have frostbite, and they would just keep going. they would keep going because they knew that they had to stand up. And so anybody that
Absolutely.
hasn't seen that movie, I think it came out in like 1989 or something. But
Was that Glory?
with Glory, yeah, what a
Yeah, with
great movie,
Denzel
man.
Washington, Morgan Freeman. Oh yeah, I
Yes.
remember seeing that.
Matthew
Yeah,
Broderick.
it's got a
Yes,
lot of
Matthew
big
Broderick.
names.
Yes.
Oh, and let me just say, fucking Morgan Freeman, I love him, man. Him and Denzel Washington, they're my favorite two male actors like ever.
Yeah, too
Tom Hanks
bad
is right underneath
Denzel's
them.
a
Those
big
two
ass
are just, they
Christian.
can do any part. They are fucking amazing. But anyway,
Yeah, too bad Denzel's a huge Christian. I mean,
You know,
oh well, you know, we
I
all have
know.
our flaws.
Can't win them all.
Terry Crews.
Oh gosh, yeah.
He lives in the big houses on the hills. I can basically see his house from my house.
Who's
You know,
that?
Terry Crews.
Oh, really?
He was in White Chicks.
Yeah.
He's a little bit more than evangelical. He's a turf. He hates anyone that's in the LGBTQIA plus community. He went out to speak against Black Lives Matter. He called Black Lives Matter a Marxist socialist. You can go watch the interview. This man lives, his kids probably go to school with my kid. Let's just put it that way. Like, we live in the same school district, you know?
Yeah, it's a shame when you have folks who seem to be so far removed because something may not be happening to them per se. So
Exactly.
therefore, oh well, this isn't happening to me, so therefore, it isn't bad, and you shouldn't be acting like it's bad either. And it's like, wait, what?
You know what? I kind of attribute it to music. Like, my pops would bump Curtis Mayfield. Like, he loved music. He hated rap. He
Interesting.
hated it. My son listens to like new age kind of trap, and I'm like, don't be like your pops. I'm driving. I'm like, okay, don't be like
Right.
pops. Don't, say anything. Don't be a
Right.
hater, because I know how it is. Like, I may not understand it. It's a little bit not of my generation, but I'm not going to hate on it just because
Right.
it's not my thing. You know.
Right. I mean, we had our party in BS hip hop that we grew up with, back in the late 70s, early 80s. My mother took my brothers and I, to see Crush Groove in the theaters.
Awesome.
We watched Beach Street Break In, which was the LA version of Beach Street. It was so I, grew up. So I would never. I mean, some stuff I'm just like, or like when as I get older now, there are some hip hop and R&B lyrics I listen to now, and I'm like, yikes, I'm like,
You know what?
woo.
I listen to a lot of DJ Quick. And in the early 90s, they would talk about the flu you can't shake because they were so scared of AIDS.
Yeah.
On one of his songs, he said, "Don't sit on a toilet seat, you might catch it." They were spreading the propaganda of the era. It aged terribly.
Yeah.
It aged so bad, and it's sad. Some of these guys still carry that. Because I was actually listening to a Locks song, and they said something about bisexuals, and I was like, "Damn it!"
Right,
Damn.
right.
Man, I liked you. Why did you have to go and say that shit?
I know.
I've been listening to these guys since the Biggie days. We're going on like 26 years I've been listening to these guys.
Yes, yeah. And I could acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff, in music, not just hip hop, but definitely in hip hop, that is just like, oh my gosh. Perhaps they were definitely victims of their time, coming out of this to an extent. I wouldn't say.
And I want to say something, that the hood mentality is a little bit more accepting of LGBTQIA plus
Yeah.
nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But at least, and this is the LA, like on the streets, less black men and women that I talk to identify as Christian. I don't know if there's a correlation, but the younger generation, I wouldn't call them atheists. They just don't identify with a religion.
There's a new study that Pew Research just dropped, in which there's a higher number of religiously unidentified, and it's like at about 21%. Now, the number of openly identified atheists is still terribly low, but there are a lot more people, a lot more younger folks who are doing away with those traditional beliefs, and there's probably more out there who probably are still, in that closet, so to speak, or
Very
they
much
just
so.
but yeah, a lot of folks are a lot of younger folks, and this is just within the Black community.
Mhm.
There are a lot. The number of the religiously unaffiliated is rising. And that's a good thing.
And the yoke of the Christian church has been on Black people since the end of the Civil War. They're like, okay, let's give them another master, call it pastor, and
Yeah,
that way
right.
that like it's
Yeah, no, it's
unreal. It's like I always say, I'm not gonna leave one master for another. And I've always had
Right.
that mentality,
hmm Yeah, I've always been a nonconformist as well. I'm like, you know what? What is the point of jumping from one sense of conformity to another? And I damn sure am not about to emulate. I'm not going to become the bully after being bullied. You
I
know,
say that I say that a
yeah,
lot
amen
about
to that.
I say that a lot about atheism. Like, I'll rock with you, I'll kick it with you, but I don't believe that someone's above me. I will glean information off of somebody. I'm like, oh wow, like that's amazing. I might even want to be like somebody. That doesn't necessarily mean that like they're above me in any way, shape, or form.
right. And this is one of the reasons why communities have been important, right?
Mhm.
Because unfortunately so many people leave religion behind and they want to emulate that savior. They want to be that they want to be that next atheist pastor. They're emulating exactly what they left in these religious communities, which is still rife with misogyny, patriarchy, anti-LGBTQ,
Mhm.
perspectives, and also racist,
Yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
also racism. And so a
I've
lot of
ran,
people don't, they still carry that stuff with them.
I've kind of ran into that a little bit in the atheist community.
Oh,
I cursed one person out in particular. You know what? And that's another thing too, though, is that in the from the male perspective, in general, people, when you're a person of color, there are unreal expectations that other men have on you.
hmm
That you are certain things, that you're into certain things. People step to me a certain way. I tell people, no, try that again.
yeah,
Try that again. Because I didn't step to you like that.
right.
Well, the bottom line is society as a whole just wants to have somebody to hate.
Yes.
In I want to get the year right. 2004. Me and my ex hung out with these three guys who met him at Sherwin-Williams. We were painters. They worked at the store. Everybody smoked. They would provide us with that. So they'd start coming over and bringing it, and we'd hang out and talk. So this one guy, Daniel, oh my God, I miss that guy. He was amazing. The stupid thing is I moved away and I didn't know any of their last names. Some of them changed their phone number, lost contact with every single one of them, which is horrible. They were amazing guys. So Matt, Ed, and Daniel, all three Black dudes. And Daniel used to come over all the time and smoke with us and shit. And we were talking about, people being prejudiced in general. I said, yeah, I just don't get it, man. Why do people care I'm gay, And he said, well, it was the blacks, and then it was the Jews, and now it's you, and here soon they're going to find somebody else to hate, and everybody's going to be okay with you being gay. And he said, and then they're going to hate, and then it turned into Muslims, and he was absolutely right. And he said, B, you're just the new N-word on the block. You'll be all right. Give it some time. People won't care here soon. They'll find somebody else to hate. So now you got Christians hating atheists and everybody hating Muslims, but the one thing I've seen through the whole thing is there's still a whole bunch of people who hate Black people, and I don't fucking get it. Can't we move on from that, man? What the? That's why I put in my description. I would love to be able to kill BLM. I would love that people got so far ahead that we don't have to bitch anymore.
Right.
People shouldn't have to bitch. You shouldn't have to watch your back when you're walking down the street. You shouldn't have to, just because of the color of your skin or what kind of shirt you're wearing, or if you got dreadlocks and you're a white guy, people got to hate you. It's stupid. Who cares, man?
I used to ask my father that same question because he came from apartheid South, and he would say the only way that we would ever get along is if aliens abducted every generation except for like the last two. That's the only thing. Took them off of Earth and never came back because we hate each other, and it's little things. It's in the town I'm from, we didn't like people in the other town people in Southern California don't like people in NorCal. We talk different, even though we're in the same state. No matter what human being, if you don't, if you're rocking a Dodger hat, someone's gonna give you a dirty look if you're wearing an Angels hat. You know, it's. I agree with you, Ox. By the way, hi Kitty, Ox, how you doing, Theo?
Oh yeah, they're all up in here. My great, awesome, freaking group that always comes in no matter what. I just love them.
So I think as human beings, we, like you said, we need something to hate. And unfortunately, unless we had an outside enemy, we will always be looking at each other, trying to hurt each other.
Yeah, conflict has been. I think it's as old as as old as humanity. It really is. Unfortunately,
I worked at a factory that was all men. Okay, so it was all men in this factory. I had never seen so many fist fights. People were being catty as hell. Like, you get a majority of anything, people are fighting for people are fighting for resources, posturing over the one woman that works at the factory. You know,
oh god,
no matter what, people are gonna hate it. It's the weirdest thing because I'm one of those people that's like, I'm not like Rodney King, but I'm like, leave people alone and the world would be a better place. But there's people that can't keep them hands to themselves. You know, there's people that want there to be problems always. I don't understand that anymore.
Misery loves company, man. They're not happy. They're not happy with themselves. They're not happy with how they were raised. They're not happy with something. So they want everybody around and be miserable too. And that's just human. I swear to God. I don't know even when I was a pissed off 20-something, I didn't want everybody else to be mad. I didn't try to make it. I was a quiet, miserable, believe it or not, I didn't talk a lot. I know that's amazing to you guys. You know me. But I just was fucking miserable. I didn't want anybody else to be miserable. They'd be like, what's wrong? I'm fine. Just go live your life. Go be happy. You're smiling. I'm not going to get into it right now, you know? So I don't get it. I think it's just selfishness and misery.
But do you think it's because of the modern conveniences that we have nowadays, that we could speak to each other more, that we're more aware? Because sometimes I don't know if the internet is a beautiful thing or a bad thing.
It can be both. It can be both. Yeah, it can be both.
It's absolutely both. It does broaden your knowledge easily.
Yes.
Without, like, when I was a kid, I'm going to tell my age. When I was a kid, we'd go to the college where my mom went back to college to further her education to provide for us because my dad sure as hell wasn't doing it. And we would spend hours in those stacks at the library because we'd ask mom something and she'd say, reference it. You have a whole library at your disposal because we could do anything at that college we wanted to. Everybody knew mom.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd walk in and watch like corpses being autopsied and shit.
That's awesome. Nice.
You know? Like anything we wanted to do that was in the science or the library department, we were in. So we would spend hours. Now you type it in, you click it, and you get it. Hopefully it's right. But most of the time it is.
I recently had to redirect my son because he was being radicalized by propaganda he was watching on YouTube.
See, and that's where the harm comes in. And that's why parents need to see. A lot of parents use the internet or TVs as a babysitter. But you can't do that, man. Those kids are the most influenced people. Children learn what they live. They are the most influenced people on this entire freaking planet.
I will also tell you that many children actually get it better than adults do. You know, but as long as
they're more open-minded.
Right, as long as you, as long as you guide and you plant those seeds of being able to discern what is good information and what isn't. You know, I'm my family and I, we're huge South Park fans, and you know, it shows it does a really good job of showing how many of these kids are probably definitely smarter than their parents.
Yes,
but yes, I do think that, you know, because when you shelter children, that's just as bad as just letting them run wild and do whatever they want.
I always tell my son, because I'll be watching something and he'll look at me and be like, you don't agree with this person. And I'll tell him, I want to know the opposing view. I want to know what these people who don't want me around, I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know, what they're planning. I can't watch too much hate, but I I want to know the other side. I know a lot of it's just fear and anger, you know.
Yeah.
And plus, like I said earlier, a lot of people have been lied to, and in the black community as well. You know, not every black person is poor. Not every
Right.
you
Hell
know what
no.
I'm saying. There's certain stereotypes. Honestly, I don't watch a lot of network television anymore because they perpetuate these disgusting stereotypes, you know. And it's not just black people; it's white people as well. Um, People of Asian descent, Hispanic, they make more money off the stereotype.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
it's
can agree with that.
interesting how it's interesting how this country has, painted, this American dream
Ugh.
for most people. You have this family, you get a nice house, you get a nice, and it really has been a lie for so many people in so many ways.
I would not be sitting here if somebody wasn't enslaved. My great grandfather was a porter in Savannah, Georgia. He was 6'7". He died of lung cancer because he was probably like, I could crush all these people, and he's getting spit on every day, but he kept his mouth
Ooh.
shut and died young. And he
Mm.
died young.
That kind of stuff can kill you. I mean, it really will. Yet racism is it is detrimental and damaging to one's health. And
Oh,
it
I can't.
has been for so many people.
I came
Yeah.
back smoking Camel non-filters. My dad looked me in the eye after being gone for 10 years. The first thing he said to me, he was like, "Those killed my father. You might want to change that."
Mm.
That was the first I did. I quit smoking Camel non-filters.
But like they were saying in Ox saying in the chat, this is America, hate is profit. But the bottom line is if the government doesn't keep us divided, we could destroy them.
In like less than a week.
They want us divided. That's what they want. If
Look
we
at-
all got together and put our heads together and said, by God, we're going to do something about this, we're the only ones that can clean out the swamp.
Yes.
But
Yes.
people aren't going to do it because they make money off of it. They make people, it's just the way it is, man.
Just
They
look at
want us divided.
look at how much is geared towards just the African American culture. I always say, like, advertisers took the black culture and then sold it back to us. You know?
Yes, at a time where it wasn't even acceptable.
Yep.
The respectability politics was so strong where you couldn't, and let's talk about going back to hip hop again, you couldn't walk, of course not in a professional environment, with the hood gear, that you saw
Sure.
in a lot of communities. But yes, now, once it starts becoming popular and more acceptable, now it's okay. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, what about
When I was a kid, like, Jordans were considered like you're part of a certain set, like you're from somewhere. And it's like now everybody's wearing Jordans. And when I say kid, I mean like 1988, 1989, it was a
Mhm.
long time ago,
Yeah.
but I've watched, like, when I was a kid, I remember I bought the Slick Rick album. I
Uh-huh.
was excited. Now, 20 years later, like, Slick Rick doesn't even own the rights to his own music.
Yeah.
Like, the culture isn't even people of color owning it, is what I'm trying to say.
And that's unfortunately what happened. That's how a lot of artists got screwed out of their contracts back then, because they took advantage of these young kids who didn't really read, what they didn't realize that they were signing their rights away, or that they were signing away publishing. They just saw this $1 amount, and they didn't have anyone to tell them, hey, this is what you need to look out for.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you see that is an unfortunate. I mean, heck, Stevie Wonder went through it. Prince went through. I mean, there are a lot of people who went through that. But
Just
yeah,
today,
mhm.
just today I saw it was a group called Black Moon. For those who don't know, there was a
Oh
rapper
yes, who got the props?
Yo,
That's right.
okay.
Yeah.
I
know.
saw Buckshot today, and I saw an interview. They all got ripped off. I wanted to cry. I got the Barry White song in my no
You
front.
don't front. You know I got you open. It's the original. Heads with the
when I'm having a
sorry,
bad day,
B. You know we're having a really good
No,
conversation
wait
here.
a minute, let him go, Will. That was good.
no, but when I'm having a bad day, I put that on, and so it's up in my feed. And then I saw an interview with him. I clicked on it, and I'm like, I screamed no so loud. My son came and checked on me to make sure Daddy was okay. I was like, no, like to my people in the chat, I love all of you. If you ever have a contract, read it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. That goes back to poor people going in the military. They didn't know. They didn't know what they were signing up for. They smoke and mirrors and shit, and then you're screwed. And it happens all because when you're poor, you can't afford to get a lawyer to look over the paperwork. So the corporation has the lawyers. People get screwed all the time. People that invent stuff get screwed. It's crazy, man.
After my dad passed, he has 6 patents. But because he worked for Rocketdyne, they're in the Rocketdyne name. His name is on it, but he just got his hourly wage while this company got millions for it, I was shocked when I found the paperwork. I'm like, and there's dumb things like bolts and, but he invented it, but because he was working for the company, they co-signed on it.
Will, when my grandfather was in the Navy, during like Nam and shit, he was like a 30-year career Navy guy, right? Chief or something, I don't remember. Master Chief, maybe. He had they had these like marker crayon things, and they kept breaking. So, and if you tried to sharpen it, it would break. So he came up, he took the center out of it and wrapped it with paper. And to this day, you can find those grease crayons.
I have like 15 of them in my toolbox right there now.
My grandfather actually invented those, and some of them still say Blaisdell on it. That was his last name. Now they acted like it wasn't going to go anywhere, and he sold it off. He could have been fucking filthy rich because he didn't know. He just didn't know. He was a Navy guy, not a lawyer. But yeah, he invented those in holy shit, what was that? 42 or 38 or something. I don't remember now. A long time ago. He was in the Navy, invented that, yeah.
And ripping people off for patents has been big business. It's not just a white-black issue. Like, back to the white-black issue. Edison, how many people of color did Edison rip off?
I think I know he worked closely with Lewis Latimer. But I think Granville T. Woods, who invented the third rail, who got ripped off quite a bit. I grew up on like Black History, so
where's my book?
Yes.
The person who invented the stoplight.
That's one of the reasons I'm
Garrett
so
Morgan
in doing these streams is because I grew up in poor white redneckville. I don't know shit, and I know I don't. That's why I sit here and nod a lot. I'll throw in an opinion here and there, but I know I don't know shit, and I want to learn more. Not only to get the word out there as well, but I want to know more. Because if I talk about it, then all the people I talk to, maybe they'll talk to 5 or 10 people. That's the only way to spread the truth. It's the only way to do it. Word of mouth is best.
That's what's important. Even I work with Christians. And they tell me all the time, they're like, "Oh, you're so nice for an atheist," and I'm like, "What's an atheist? What's an atheist supposed to be?" We have to build bridges, or we're all just gonna burn. Unfortunately, we have to work together, and it's so cliche, and I hate saying that.
I know, right?
It's so cliche. I hate saying
it. Don't matter if you're black or white.
Some days I wake up. I don't want to work with anybody. I want
the
whole world to go away. Like all y'all can go over there together. Especially when I see two sides arguing, I'm like, you guys can go over there together. Like you guys can go do that, because like especially in America, we're yelling at each other and everybody's kind of broke. The rich are getting our way up here and we're all kind of down here. And I think that needs to be addressed, and then we can get back to the ancient beefs we've had since
Right.
since the old days, because right now we're all being screwed over, you know.
Agreed. Agreed. And I
One
just
way or the
find,
other.
yeah, I just find so many people who argue against reparations,
Mhm.
which, and I think the people who do that really don't know the history of how there were so many Black businesses that were destroyed, especially after Reconstruction. How many people lost their lives, their property, their means that they built, that they built, and also, for our ancestors who built this country for definitely not credit, but definitely no pay.
Oh yeah.
Richard Pryor told a joke. He was in Louisiana, but he was real. He said Edwards built all this. So basically, if you live anywhere east of Texas and it's over 120 years old, slaves built that. Black slaves built that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And on the West Coast,
Absolutely.
it was the Native Americans that built a lot of stuff here. The Spaniards, they enslaved the Native Americans here as well.
Yeah, and they forced the Asian, the Chinese to build, to help build the railroads.
Yep.
So yeah, we know many of us know the history of how so many people, even a lot of the white folks, got screwed over. Like I said, the poor white folks got screwed over.
And if anybody wants to know what happens when you become a xenophobic society, up the street from my house is a decommissioned Japanese internment camp, which is now
Mm,
a place where people hike.
wow.
There you
Is
go.
that a
Will.
historic landmark or anything, or?
No, they tore it down to the foundation, put a nature center on top, and they tried to erase the history.
Oh, see. Now, I think it's important for people to know the ugly side of history.
Oh, I bring it up in
And
every conversation.
Thank
yep,
you.
it's
Thank
especially
you.
important.
especially I have this thing, like we'll be sitting at a nice restaurant or something, and I'm the a-hole that'll bring it up, like, there was a concentration camp just like half a mile from here where they had Japanese people. I think it's important, especially because people move to where I'm from to get away from LA, and it's like people, if you ignore the problems of society, they will eventually catch you.
Yeah.
If you keep running and not helping, I always say help your brother, because I look at everybody as a human race, but the truth is, if not, they're going to come after you if you
Right.
don't help them, because eventually the disenfranchised get tired of asking.
Oh,
Tupac said it the best,
yeah.
first it's, hey, please, and then it's like, hey, and then it's like, no, I'm coming for you, your wallet,
Mhm.
it's progression.
Yeah, I mean, slavery wasn't just people accepting that condition. There were many slave revolts. There were many uprisings. And I think that's another reason why that period is important, because and I think that's also another thing that bothers me about so many Black folks being Christian as well, because it's like, okay, do you realize that
Mhm,
it takes away the resistance that many of our ancestors went through? It was like
mhm.
people didn't just accept, they didn't just accept the enslavement. Many escaped, or many rebelled
And
against.
you're also bringing up something that's a really, really sore subject with me, is the erasure of our history.
Dude, I
The
Yeah.
was just
utter
gonna say something
and
about that.
complete
But
erasure. And it's little things. It's like, I can't remember his name, but in the 9/11 movie, they made the dude who opened the stairs, they made him a white guy, even though he was a black guy. They're
Mm.
every in the good and the bad and the ugly, the story that's being told is a real story from Bass Reeves, who was a
Okay,
sheriff
yes.
in
Uh-huh.
Oklahoma. So Clint Eastwood was pretending to be an African American man, in that movie.
Mm.
That entire story is Bass Reeves' story. That really happened in real
Yeah.
life, and he dragged that man all the way back to Oklahoma from Mexico.
that's like the movie set I was working on, The Harder They Fall. The Harder They Fall was done like in the 40s or 50s or something. And it was a
Mhm.
cowboy movie, and it was all white dudes. But it happened to a group of Black cowboys. So Netflix redid it, and it should be coming out this year. It's going to be a really good movie, by the way. You
Nice.
guys really should watch it, because I watched a lot of it being filmed. But they finally redid it and said, "This is ridiculous, dude. This didn't even happen to a bunch of white people. Why, and therein lies the problem. They want to twist shit, always
And
twisting shit.
also,
And
most
let me say one more thing, Will.
Oh, go ahead.
And as far as like the history monuments and stuff, everybody, they started tearing them down with BLM, which, hey, good. But I said, don't destroy them. And somebody looked at me who was Hispanic, like, what the fuck, white bitch? And I was like, no. I think every city should take them all, put them into a park surrounded by a wall, so people don't have to look at them if they don't want
shame.
to. And you should be able to walk through there and look at plaques and know the fucking truth. Because the more we tear down, the more we destroy, the more the new generations coming up are there. If you don't know history, you're going to repeat it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that people should be able to take their kids through there and say, look at this shit. Don't do this. So I don't think they should be destroyed. I think they should be put in a proper place and used for education for the kids that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
The Simon Wiesenthal Center scared me at like 8 or 9 years old, so that works. It works. If you put they had this exhibit that you would walk through. They would scream like anti-Semitic slurs at you. Then you walk through another room and they're screaming the N-word at everybody. But they want everyone to feel what it is,
And where's that at?
It's the Simon Wiesenthal Center in LA.
Nice.
It's the Museum of Tolerance, but it's been renamed a few times.
That's great, though, man. Everybody should know what it feels like.
Oh yeah,
hell yeah.
All the kids of LA, the LA county school system, have been traumatized by that place.
Well, but the problem is people act like, well, racism's not my problem because I'm white and I live in a white area, or I'm Hispanic and I live in New Mexico and Arizona, so it's not my problem. It's everybody's fucking problem.
Yep.
You're just lucky that you don't have to deal with it. That doesn't mean there's not millions of Americans out there every fucking day dealing with it. And I don't know if anybody saw it, but there was a thing on like Facebook or something, and this white chick started like beating on this Muslim chick. And the other Muslim girl sitting right next to her is just like this because they're not supposed to fight or anything, So she's just whacking on this girl, and somebody says something, and she goes back, goes to hit her again, and out of nowhere, this black girl comes up, grabs her by her hair, slams her down on the floor, and starts pounding the shit out of her. And I was like, yes!
You couldn't get away with that here.
Violence was horrible, don't get me wrong, in general. But I like the fact that girl had someone else who's a different color, who is not like the rest of the people she hangs out with, to kick her ass. She probably needed that shit.
Oh, absolutely. Especially people who think they're high and mighty and above everybody else.
Yeah, fuck that. Ain't nobody above anybody. We all put our pants on either same way, 2 legs or 1 leg at a time, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I think there's so many white people now who are just so shocked that they're being held accountable for the things that they do wrong. Hence the January 6th, event. I don't even want to call it I will say it's an insurrection, but there were other insurrections that were more deadly.
Yeah.
I prefer incident of stupidity, but go ahead.
Yeah, but now they are being held more accountable for the things that historically they were able to get away with. And it's just so amazing that they're shocked. Like, what? Like, what did I do wrong? Well, what you did was wrong. It was always wrong.
Yep.
So what you're saying right now is bad for my blood pressure. Because when I heard that one dude that had that crazy
and he wanted to again.
See, in LA County, they'd laugh at you and punch you in the face if you said something like that. That's the problem. I don't think we teach personal responsibility anymore. And so you can see it in certain people, and it's not a black-white issue. Certain people, it's up to the individual. When they're held accountable, they freak out.
Yeah.
They lose it because they've never been held accountable.
Right. And you definitely see it from people who were brought up with privilege, and they have a sense of entitlement that they are not good. Well, we saw that in the previous president. Who has never really been made to be held accountable for anything. I mean, that is your textbook definition.
We always say those are the people who never heard no. His whole life,
Yes.
no one ever said no to him. You know?
I mean, by the time he was 23, he had a $27 million or $25 million trust fund. And his birthday present when he hit 18 was $1 million. That motherfucker doesn't know shit.
Yeah.
I
And
heard
that's the
no
problem
like
I have
six.
with most politicians. They don't know what it's like to be the little guy, the poor kid. You know, honestly, like one of my sisters growing up used to be mad because we grew up poor. I got older. I was glad I did because then I could understand what it was fucking like to not have.
Right.
You know, if we didn't go out in the garden, we didn't weed it, and we didn't pick our vegetables, and we didn't kill that pig and pull the skin off of it and gut it and chop it up, we didn't eat. That's how we ate. So if you know, I'm glad I didn't want to be raised with a silver spoon in my mouth because I'm more compassionate of other people. You know, I got $5 in my pocket or I got a can of food on me and I see a homeless person and they don't look like a druggie because you know we all got limitations. I'll give it to them, man, because I'm not hurting. I mean, I'm not rich, but I'm not hurting. If I have $2 or something, I'll give somebody a cup of coffee or I'll give a cigarette or something. Here, man, you smoke, here, have a cigarette, you know?
Yeah.
Just because I know. I've been homeless. I was homeless for a month and a half. It sucks. But you know, that's the thing is the bad things that happen to us in life, we could do two things with them. We can get mad or we can improve ourselves with it.
Yeah.
And you just got to make that decision.
You know, it's that funny thing about privilege. Out of I have 35 cousins that are just on this side of LA. And I think besides myself, I think I'm the only, probably my brother and I are the only two out of all of them to have our own house. And we all grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, but they're entitled. And they feel like, oh, because I'm from here, people owe me, or oh, they think, oh, because I'm from LA, I'm better than people. Like, no, go somewhere else. It's even harder. Go to New York. It's harder. Go to Florida, you know. So entitlement, I think it's in all communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's everywhere. And it's something that in the latter 2000s, like we were kind of under the illusion that things got better. It's just that we had more stuff. We were consumers. So we were blocked by all this crap we had. People still hated each other. There was still racism. We just had an iPhone. I don't know about you. My iPhone is distracting as hell, you know?
But I wanted to say something to what you said, B, about, you know, growing up poor and growing up not having, because I know exactly what you mean by that. There's this old saying that being broke builds character, and it shouldn't have to. You know, the fact that, you know, there are still people who have to go without. There are still kids who don't have. You know, it is a travesty. You know, it throughout the world. But
Absolutely.
I think those of us who were able to learn from that and to build, you know, better lives, you know, for ourselves and to learn from that, you know, and I know exactly what you mean, because like I know what it's like to not have, so I do appreciate what I have now. And
Hell
it
yeah,
makes
you
me-
do.
and I can relate to so many people because I'm from, you know, I am of the people. I'm from the people.
That's right.
And I think that's also what creates better leadership is those who experienced it and who lived it. It's the lived experiences that make a huge difference. You know, and not just those, and that doesn't invalidate higher education, because I think it is important. But this idea that it's one of the only factors, like having a degree is the only thing that makes you smarter, is, you know, is very, very I think that is one of the worst ways to go about trying to change things. You know.
Yes.
I think it's funny you would say that, because I always think if you took half of these people wolfing on the internet and being higher and mightier than everybody else, if you put them in an everyday situation, they would not survive, even in the things that they're saying. You know. So when people try to come at me, sometimes I'm like, I'm speaking from life experience. It's not just because I'm talking out of my R's. Like I was like down and out throughout my entire 20s, but it taught me to build for myself, make something of myself. I quit drinking when I was 21 because I had such a problem, and I just built from there. And I built myself up from being homeless, from being nothing. Because my dad, when I was 17, on my birthday, he gave me a sleeping bag and a map. He was not playing. He was like, "You don't want to live here? You don't have to." Like, because he was an old schooler. He was like sink or swim, And it took me 11 years, but I made something of myself, and I'm appreciative of that. Because he would always tell me the old Bill Cosby line, "I got money, you ain't got shit." He would tell me all the time, like, "You ain't got shit. Go out there." That was his line. I loved him for it though, because it made me go out and make something of myself, And it feels good when it's not handed to you. When it's not,
Right. But I mean, help is always good, especially for those who have and this is what gets me about, people who are like, "Oh, well, if people are poor, then how about they just go out and do this?" Well, systemically, if there are factors that are preventing people, then, when people are, when people have one hand tied behind their back, that's you can't just put that in the same category. But it's about balancing the institutional factors with also the teaching the values of hard work and earning what you get.
Absolutely.
And it is, and like you said, there are a bunch of people who were born, like you said, with the silver spoons in their mouths, and like you said, the life experiences, they probably walk out in the street and wouldn't survive.
Not 5 minutes.
They wouldn't last.
That's why I'm appreciative. That's why I brought up that, like, my family came out of slavery and Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And that's why, because I try to remember that. I try to, like, keep myself humble, because, I don't know. Do you know who Lorenzo Ball is?
The name sounds familiar.
He plays basketball. He's super light skinned. His dad,
Yes.
woofs and gets him in a lot of trouble. Like, there's a lot of people like that where I'm from who I feel that forgot about their heritage, and they're uber rich, and they forget that people died so they could be there. So, and I try to remind people, like, people died so I could be sitting here and be the real life Sanford and Son.
Right.
So I try to remind myself of that,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's important. You should never forget where you came from. You should never forget the people that helped you get there, I mean, my mom died when I was 18. I ended up going down to Florida, and my sister gave me a kick in the ass, which I needed. And, I was like, "All right, fine. You guys don't want to help me with money?" They were like, "Well, we'll help you with food." And I was like, "No, fuck it. I got it. I'll do it myself. I don't care." I slept on a pool table. I slept on a bar floor. And if anybody's ever been in an old bar, whoo, that stinks. And I graduated to someone's floor at their apartment, and then I paid them like $20, $30 a month to sleep on their floor, and then I slept on the couch. I got up to $50 a month, but I did it myself, and I'm glad my sisters did that to me, honestly, because it taught me a lesson, But you're right, people born with silver spoons, they don't get it. That's why I don't think people should just, even if you have money, don't give your kids everything. Make them earn that shit. They're gonna appreciate it because they work for it. I know people that are like, "Oh, my kid won't eat vegetables." Well, shit, man. If they grew them themselves, by God, they'd taste a lot better. Because when I grew up, man, those vegetables tasted good. I mean, I went out and picked them. I weeded. I planted them. With everybody else in my family, and those vegetables were fucking delicious, man.
That's the one old school thing about me. Like, I will sit at the table and stare at my kid. Like, I will grow a beard. I will sit there. See, but he's past that stage. He eats what I eat,
Yeah.
But that's the one old school thing about me, But if you don't instill those, see, the reason I'm like that though is because I have cousins who are hitting 45, 50, one who's almost 60, and they still act like they're 25. They still go out and party. They still, like, I have two cousins that have been living together since 1998 because they can't stop. If you can have crazy habits and function, I don't judge you. If you can
Right.
handle what you're doing, I'm known to judge. But if you've been doing something for 30 years and it's not working, I'm gonna tell you,
Yeah.
if you're in the same spot that I saw you 30 years ago, I'm gonna tell you to your face that you're messing up, you know?
Yeah, they need to put some mirrors up in their house so they can look at themselves 3 times, because apparently
So
they're missing that shit.
And so I use that as an example. Like, I'm not going to be like you, you know, I'm not going to, I just see where I'm from. I see too many people waiting for inheritance and waiting for things, you know, that they could just easily go out and get themselves,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, there's definitely. I grew up with a lot of that too, and I realized that it definitely isn't just a. It's a small time and a small town mentality, and a lot of people in big cities have it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and it is unfortunate, you know, that we do see a lot of our family members and people that we grew up with, some of my peers who I've reconnected with, and I'm just like, wow, I cannot believe that I understand, you know, even with the environment, the fact that there was an opportunity for you to do better, and all you're trying to do is hustle me. And I'm like, nah, you know, you're not going, you're not going to hustle me or try to get over on me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because, you know, just to get what you want.
You know,
But
I
mhm.
recently ran into that with my sister. She has a full PhD, full doctorate. She kind of, it's a long story, but she kind of threw it all away for her ex-husband who used to play for the Raiders. It's a long story, but like, she's a full doctor and she works at a high school, barely making it, barely, and she would rather sit around and drink a bottle and feel sorry for herself. You know,
Yeah.
and she literally could be the real life Claire Huxtable. She has the degree already, you know, she has the smarts, you know, but she kind of threw it away, giving into societal pressure. And being from the suburbs, there's this unspoken thing of you don't feel black enough. You don't
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
So I have a couple cousins that have moved to Atlanta because we have family there. You
Okay.
know, so we call it's the Great Migration 2.0, you know,
Yes.
back, you know. And how B's laughing right now is how me and my mom laugh every time someone moves to Georgia. We're like, oh Lord, here we go.
Right.
Here we go again. They'll be back in 6 months when they find out how humid it is, you know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true.
I've been here. We've been here now for, oh my gosh, 23 years. So, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean. A lot of New Yorkers are down here as well.
Mhm.
Is almost everyone in the Atlanta area is from somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
You
That's
know,
like LA too.
it is a transplant city.
That happened with a lot of people I grew up with. A lot of them are in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and because my mom transplanted us from Virginia when I was 4 out to West Virginia from the city, because she was like, I'm not raising my kids in a city. I want them to have good values. She knew shit was happening there, drugs starting to come in and stuff.
Mhm.
So, but I tell you what, I looked up a lot of people online. I went to 2 different high schools. One was Catholic and full of a bunch of Italian people. It was a Roman Catholic high school. I mean, it was full of Italian people. Almost all of them were. And then we moved, and they wouldn't let me go to that school anymore. So I went to this county high school, and it was full of a bunch of white rednecks. And I'm going to tell you right now, those white rednecks are nurses and all this other shit now. And a bunch of those Italian kids that grew up with that silver spoon, they ended up doing drugs, going to jail. And I mean, all I can go off of is what I've seen. Statistically, it looks like to me, you make your kids work for that shit, they're gonna come out to be a better adult.
Oh,
They're gonna appreciate it more. Bottom line.
so that it's funny you'd say that. I was a Boy Scout, and in my
See?
boy
No.
in my Boy Scout troop, a friend of mine, we're the only two out of I think 12 people not to go to prison, and they were all white people.
See?
You know, they were
It
so
doesn't matter what the fucking color your skin is. It's how
yeah.
you're raised. It's what you do with it,
Yeah,
My
and I
my
think
dad was
there's
a prejudiced bastard. You know what I did with that information? I was like, I'm not gonna be you.
Yeah.
right,
That's what
yeah,
I did with it. I
and
looked at
what
my mom's side of it and my dad's side of it and said, "You're a dickhead, man. I don't want to be like you."
and
And
you know
I'm
what?
not gonna say that, and the one thing I want to say is, people don't understand what they say in front of their children and how it sticks in their heads. You know,
Ooh,
I
yes.
mean,
Yeah,
my dad used to say some nasty shit every joke was either the N-word in it or something about something being Chinese because it broke, or you're a tight ass, you're Jewish. He had all kinds of jokes that he told. And he would say things all the time. And I grew up, and even as an adult, not being prejudiced, even this happened to be like last year. Somebody did shit, and I had a bad thought go through my head, and I was like, "Oh my god, he's still in my head."
Right. Well,
People,
he was
I'm
a
gonna
regular
be
Archie
50 this.
Bunker,
I'm gonna be
wasn't he?
50 years old this year. I was disconnected from that man by the time I was 8 years old. I had no relationship after I was 8 with him, and it's still in my head 42 fucking years
Wow.
later.
Propaganda works.
Watch what you say to your kids, man.
Oh yeah, propaganda works. Like my ex-wife and I, we get along, and every once in a while she'll call me and be like, "Do you realize what you said in front of your son that he repeated right in front of me, and I knew it came out of your mouth because it sounded like you?" I have to check myself sometimes, because I'll say something and I want him to have his own opinion.
Yeah.
Rather than just spew out my ethics. I want him to, from his world experience, from his life experience, have his own stance. I think it's important.
I
It
agree.
is.
But when he goes off the rails, I check him in 0.5 seconds. I tell him like, "Nah, we don't believe that around here." I do pull I do pull camp counselor on my son sometimes. I'm like, "No, we don't." Nope. But it's important to raise your kids. It's important to, because, and that's another thing. I complain about this a lot. Like somewhere along the line, people stop checking their children.
Yeah. I mean, especially because my kids, my youngest just turned 12, and so now I have a young adult, a teenager, and a preteen. So
my son's 11, so I know.
Yeah, and
Will
so
was saying I got a tween. Yep.
I got the tween, and it's just so so they're now at the ages where they are more independent, but yet that you still have to be listening and paying attention. And, they have their, they definitely have their opinions. And, I'm trying not to do the old school route of, I'm gonna whoop your ass if you say this or whatever. But, there's still that, okay, you need to know that you need to be careful about what you say as well.
You see, that's another thing. Like, I felt like all my parents were no joke. They would like if there was consequences and repercussions. No matter what you did, we got spanked, we got checked real quick. My dad should have played hockey. Because if you walk down the hallway, what? I heard you got an F or something. Like, he did not play around. But it made me violent.
Right.
Someone, I remember I was in the 6th grade, someone stepped to me, I broke their nose. My dad was happy. So I thought, okay, I got positive reinforcement from fighting. So I started fighting, because I got a negative message from my pops, So you got to be careful what you tell.
Oh yes, absolutely. There are a lot of things that our parents did, like B said, that were very, very detrimental, that are still very triggering to us, and we have to be careful that we are not repeating those same mistakes. But it takes a conscious effort.
It does.
To do it too. It's
does,
a lot of work.
Because then your kids go to school and say it to some other kid, and that other kid goes, "Oh damn. All white people hate us, or whatever. All black people hate us. That it just keeps rolling like that. My God, we got to stop that shit."
And that's my thing with violence. Like, excuse me, I just basically told myself it's got to stop with me. It's got regardless, because like I've seen my sister discipline her kids. She yells her kids' names. I'm standing in attention because I'm so well trained. I was so well trained as a kid, I don't need robot. I don't want a robot child. I don't need a parrot, so I'm also not like best friend dad either,
Right.
Oh, there's a line. Yeah.
There's a big line, but I'm one of those people. I don't beat kids. I don't. I had to stop because I just saw me and all my friends knew how to fight because our parents beat the crap out of us. you know,
Right.
and we
And
became violent.
right. And even in our neighborhood, I'm from the projects, and kids, even though we had fun growing up, we had to know how to fight. We had to know
Yep.
how to defend ourselves.
Oh
And
yeah.
unfortunately, that can be also a trauma response,
Yep.
because of what our parents did also in our environment. So if there is someone who wasn't really raised like that,
Oh yeah.
then it's hard. It would be hard for them to understand.
I'm still jumpy. I'm still jumpy in a crowd. I'm still kind of jumpy in a crowd.
Oh, that
I would
sucks.
be even worse after COVID's over.
Yeah, not only don't hit me, but don't breathe on me.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of what we're speaking of is it taking a conscious effort for people to really understand and then do differently.
Very
Yes.
much
You
so.
know,
So
it
important.
And
yes.
I think that's the one message I try to convey is oh, did your stream stop? Or is it just my connection? That's the one message I try to convey.
Yep.
Oh, you are. It was my phone. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I try to preach peace because there is so much hatred and so much violence that it has to start somewhere. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a long memory.
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, and a stack of history books.
Right.
But see, that's what's important. Teach kids history. Everybody needs to know it. The white people need to know black history. Black people need to know white history. Aww,
Yeah, it's my
who's got a baby?
grandbaby.
Aw.
I got 2 babies.
To, to be to be fair though, B, I know more about England than I know about America.
Really?
Well, we get taught their history until it comes up to, we
Yeah.
get taught UK history basically.
Yeah, I don't remember any of that shit from school. I just didn't care about it, man. I'm
I'm
not
going
even
through it
kidding.
right
I was like, all right, done with that test.
now.
Control Alt Delete. Don't need it no more. And don't even get me started on the school system, because I'm gonna tell you what I think should happen is they should teach them as much as they can till they're about 14 years old, and then they should figure out what that kid specializes in, and they should pre-college them for the rest of their time in school. And those kids, even if they didn't go to college, you know what? They know shit. They don't even teach kids how to write a damn check anymore.
We also
Sometimes you got to do that. I actually had a kid ask me how to write a check a few years ago, because
Wow.
nobody ever showed him in school, and he had to make a payment to somewhere, and they couldn't do it online, couldn't do it through a credit card.
Mm.
How do you do this? I got a check from my bank. I don't know how to write it.
Wow. See, they
Yeah.
taught us. They taught us, I think.
Yeah, well, because
my-
we're old enough, they quit doing that shit. They don't even teach them how to write anymore. Everything's electronic. God,
And-
you take away cell phones and everything, those kids are gonna be like, "This is a pen? What does this do?"
And cursive. There's someone who works for me that can't read my writing.
Yeah,
I have to like stop and like write everything out slowly because I write in doctor, and everybody else can read what I write except for this person.
yeah.
And they're just now coming out of the school system not knowing cursive.
Oh.
And I'm not saying I'm not for modern technology, and I'm not for kids learning shit that they're going to be dealing with. But God, teach them more, man. You don't teach them
Yeah.
shit. And
Yeah.
then you keep changing how to teach them math and stuff. Then they go home and their parents don't have a clue how to help them. Like, what the fuck is
You know
that
what?
shit? You're
I
playing with
was-
the school system, but you're not really improving anything. You're not
No.
doing shit to help those kids out. You need to give them, if kids got into some kind of if high schools were separated by tech, like,
Mhm.
I like science, I like math, I like auto mechanics. If every high school was like that, those kids would have a basis to work off of, and they might not need to go to college. They might be able to learn the rest on the job. It'd be something to get them
Yeah,
started.
when
When
I
they
was
go,
in
they
high
can go out in the workforce and have a good job and pay for their own college if they need
the
to.
New York City high school system have vocational schools that specialize. I mean, I went to a performing arts high school, but there was actually a high school called, the high school of like for New York City Transit for kids who might want to work for the transit authority.
Oh,
And then
awesome.
you
See,
had
that's great.
yeah, and then you
That's
also
great.
had other vocational schools.
We
You
had that
know,
here too. We have
yeah.
And I
YO-Tech.
think all of them. I think all high schools should be vocational schools. All of them. There should be no bullshit.
Do you know,
They stuck me in high school, and I was good at science, and I was good at English, and I barely passed everything else. Like,
I
with
was
the
the
skin
same
of my
way.
fucking teeth, had to go through summer school to get my diploma and shit because I wasn't into that shit, and I'm ADHD. In case nobody knew, I'm
No,
ADHD. So I if I'm not interested in the subject, I can't learn it. I just can't.
you know what?
It won't absorb into my head. And if they would have done that with me, my God, I could have been so much more by the time I was 22.
I agree
So much
because
more.
even back in my day, they taught me how to play the violin. They taught me how to speak French, and I speak Spanish already. I don't remember a word of French. I'm telling you right now. But because
Parlez-vous français, that's all I got, man.
Because I spoke Spanish, they made me take French class. Like, what I'm getting at is that back in the day, kids were classically trained. So they would give you an art, they would give you history, and they would give you detail. Like, I still know how to play the violin to this very day. And I learned 30 years ago how to play the violin. You know, they don't have arts in schools anymore. They don't have extracurricular sports teams. They don't have they'll have money for a sign out in front of the school, but they won't have money for anything else. I think our priorities are messed up. We have school boards that are overpaid, people like that redistrict, so all the rich kids go here, all the poor kids go here.
See, but then you go right back to people with money getting what they need and the people without money not fucking getting it. And it's ridiculous. It needs to be better regulated. It needs to be more even. I've been paying for school for kids for years. My kid's about to turn 30. He hasn't been in school in I don't know how long. He's got his own like grants and loans going on. He's going through online college, works full time and all this shit. He does all his own shit. He's good. But I still pay for people to go to school. Why is it only going to this school? Or you know what I mean? Like,
no, I know exactly.
It's so uneven. They don't give a shit. And then they're like,
problem.
well, these kids are failing. It's their fault. No, motherfucker, it's yours.
And that's another thing. We get told stories and accept it. So we'll say, oh, that neighborhood over there, they're gonna fail. So when they do fail, we just kind of accept it, and no one gets outraged. No one cares because we as human beings, we believe stories. We say, oh, that's too bad. Oh, that's so sad. But we don't do anything about it. So it's got to be boots on the ground. People have to, you got to help people out. That's why I always say, like, hey, Downtown Rescue Mission needs people in LA. If you live in LA, you can go there right now. They'll put an apron on you right now to help out people. There's always somewhere to help. There's always somewhere. You just have to find it. It's one of those things. Because I was down and out and I was homeless in my 20s, when I made something of myself, the first thing I did was turn around and go back to the place, a drop-in center. First, I wanted to be like, hey, I'm a success story.
Right?
But then they offered me a job, and I was like, oh, for real. And they offered me a job, and I got to turn around and help people and tell them, like, hey, I used to be you. Look, I get in my car and drive home every day, So
man, if I could find a job that paid my bills where I could literally like help people, oh, that's my dream, man. That is literally my dream job. Because everything I end up doing, I don't believe. That's why I can't do sales. I don't believe 100% in that product, and I don't lie. I just suck at it.
I'm going to tell you,
here I am with barely any money because I don't sell myself out, and I won't sell a product that I don't believe in, and I won't do this and that and that. So I don't have shit. I mean, oh well, I got my morals though, damn it.
I'm the same way. I tried every hustle you could possibly think of, everything. I can't work for commission because of the anxiety. Because I got bills to pay. Like,
I can't do it either.
I worked for Carl's Jr. basically off and on throughout my entire 20s, and they were like, bye. At the end of, like, I worked there almost 8 years. And at the end, they were just kind of like, bye. see you later, you know. And I do, they bankrolled my 20s. They helped me out. I would have been super homeless if it wasn't for them, you know. But these companies don't care about you. They make millions and millions off of you, and you're just a warm body. And like, I was a manager, I had my own store. They had 15 people to replace me, ready to replace
Oh
me.
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
in a heartbeat, you know.
And they will bring in somebody young that is stupid and wants $20 an hour when they deserve 30.
And
then they'll get rid of your ass. See, that's why people say, "Oh, I'm loyal to my job. I'm loyal to my company." I'm like, you're stupid. They ain't loyal to you.
And they
when COVID hit, you know what they did here when COVID hit? The town right down the road from me, they fired a bunch of the city workers. A bunch of them were about to get their goddamn retirement. They were within a year of retirement. They fired him and kept the new kids. Fired off a bunch of them, transit drivers and all this shit. Got rid of a bunch of them, man. Guy comes in a different uniform to my work, and I was like, dude, did you get a new job? Weren't you working for the city? Did you already retire? Nah, man, they canned me.
Wow.
You're 63. I know I was going to retire next year. Fuck. There's no loyalty, man. Don't fall for that shit. All you young kids, don't fall for that shit.
Oh, no, whatsoever. No, I got sued twice working for that company, and all they did was get me a lawyer, and I was liable both times.
Really? Oh gosh.
Yeah, because it was, you know, it's lawyerese. They worded it to where, because I was a store manager, I'm legally liable when they didn't want to back up their own store. I worked in Portland, Oregon. You want to talk about racial inequality?
Yeah.
In a place like Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon is, I'm sorry, Oregon is majority African American, but mainly African American people live in the cities. You know, so that's the only reason Oregon is blue, because for a long time, Black people were not allowed to live in Oregon, and that racism is still there. People get offended sometimes that I can afford to live where I live. Even when I worked for Carl's Jr., I lived in a nice place. And the landlord told me and my ex roommate and I, who was from Ghana, she said she didn't feel comfortable with Black men living in her apartment, and she kicked us out. She didn't even give us a warning. She was like, "You guys gotta go." Yeah. She told me to my face. And at least she told me to my face. Yeah.
That is terrible. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I walked in across the street to the apartments, and I was like, "Please tell me that you like Black people." But this woman, she was a lesbian, and she had 3 adopted Black children, so I was safe.
There you go.
Hooked me up. She hooked me up with an apartment. I got lucky. But I was a young dumb kid. I didn't know that like she couldn't kick me out. I was like, she doesn't want me here, I'm gone. I was a young dumb kid, you know.
Yep. It's a fact.
But the one thing I'll say is it's kind of the thing I picked up from the 5%ers. At least somebody was racist to my face. I appreciate it, knowing where someone stands rather than going to a job interview and being turned down just on sight, you know.
Right. And then people smiling in your face about it.
I went into a trucking company a few years back when I was a truck driver. I was trying to find something local. So I applied at this trucking company. They said, drop off the application. The manager's not here, blah, blah, blah. I went back out over the road, came back 2 weeks later, walked in and said, hey, I was told to come and speak to so-and-so, and he'd be here. And the lady was like, oh, let me get him. She goes down the hall and takes a hard right. And it's like a warehouse. They got paper thin walls. She said, hey, that dyke's back.
Oh,
and the guy goes, oh, fuck, great, I got to deal with her. And I walked in, and I had the rest of my paperwork they wanted, and I took it and I threw it at him. And I said, fuck you, I don't want to work for your company. And he looked at me like, what? And I said, I heard all that shit. Turns out, I found out I had a buddy who was a truck driver. He applied at the same place. He was a Black dude. You know what they said? Oh, that fucking N-word's back. I got to deal with him now. Yep. Didn't matter what color you were. They didn't give a shit. You weren't a white redneck, man. They didn't want you. I lost so many jobs going into places because I dressed like a guy or whatever. They figured out I was gay. I don't know. Something.
I get that.
I mean, I was plenty qualified for all of them. I have perfect driving record, you know, blah, blah, blah. Been driving truck for years. No reason to not hire me.
I used to, I actually have made a lot of money selling stuff online. As you can see my hoarding behind me. And I was wondering why people weren't buying my stuff. So it was a social experiment. I used
you
my
told me
ex-wife-
about this.
Yeah, I used my ex-wife's picture. I made so much money, I gave her a cut. I made so
hey,
much money.
Will,
because
what's your ex-wife look like?
She's white Irish, like first generation American, or both of her parents were born in Ireland.
Figure.
And so,
You know, and the companies these days will ask you for a photo when you go to apply for the job. I don't put no damn photo. Fuck you. Doesn't matter what I look like. Fuck you. I'm giving you my picture. I like to hit the EEO applications.
Oh, yeah,
female,
yeah.
prefer not to say. White, Hispanic, prefer not to say. Fuck you. You look at my qualifications. You go off of that. You don't need to know anything else about me.
I've always felt like that is a form of discrimination, because when I walk into a job interview, I'm qualified. If I'm sitting in that chair, I'm qualified.
Right.
I'm not going to apply for something that I'm not qualified for.
Right.
You know, so I know that I deserve the job.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give you any discernible information to where you know what I look like until I walk in and you talk to me. I've had to be like that.
Yeah, it's true.
I speak Spanish too, so I've been discriminated against, and I turn and look at people and they're like, "Uh-oh." Because it's hard to hide. It's hard to hide when someone says something. You turn and look at them like, "Are you insane?" Like, I understood what you're saying.
Yeah, I've worked around so many guys because I've always done guy jobs, construction or truck driving or whatever. And I'll meet a group of guys and we're getting along, and then one of them has to say something prejudiced. I'm like, dude, why'd you have to do that? And they're like, what? And I'm like, now I don't like you. And they just look at me like, what the fuck? I'm like, nah, we ain't cool anymore. Don't talk to me anymore. I mean, I'll talk to you about work shit because I have to, but we're not cool. Don't try to hang out with me at lunch or something. And they just look at me. I'm like, fuck you. No, I'm not. Because that's the problem. You get, it's just like you guys saying you're not, you have to be a certain amount of black.
Yeah.
And they do that. Like people talk shit about black people or Hispanics. And that one job I had, same job, they would say, oh, this came up missing. I bet you one of the damn Spics or the Hispanics or the Mexicans took it. And then we'd look at cameras later and be a white dude. Like, up, man. And they would do that shit. And I would just tell them, dude, don't say that. You want to say your racist jokes? You go somewhere else. This is work and I don't want to hear it. No, I don't want to hear it.
It's like that worldwide. Sicilians, they don't talk to the light skins, don't talk to the dark skins. And in Mexico,
I know. I'm Roman Italian. Sicilians are dirt to Roman Italians.
Yeah.
I think they're
the darker ones, which just goes to show how, like you said, how black people are hated all over the world.
Yep.
I have family in Sinaloa, Mexico. So I went down there. I'm walking around and I asked my cousin, why is no one looking me in the eye? And they said it's strange for them to see a person of my color walking around with them, because they were white, they were basically white people. They're Mexican, but they're like, they're bees color. And they self-segregate. So the darker Hispanics self-segregate from the Mexicans segregate themselves from the light-skinned Mexicans. And all it is bloodline. They're from the same country. It's just these ancestors are closer to the Spaniards and these ones are closer to the Inca.
But what are we, a bunch of Nazis? Come on.
Yeah.
And that goes on right now.
Yeah.
I went to Savannah, Georgia, and my cousins were calling me light skin and things that I don't want to say on your stream. We self-segregate no matter what people are, and I'm I have their face, so they can't deny me.
Right. And it's true. Does it money versus no money, dark skin versus light skin, what area you lived in? Like, come on, man.
Oh yeah.
It's just, we all sit down to take a shit. I'm just saying. Some countries they squat, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
But like you said earlier, if our distractions were gone, we'd get rid of everybody in power. If all of our distractions were gone, we would get rid of all of them. And that's why it's cheaper to sell the culture back to us, keep us angry, even though church, religion, and state they're supposed to be way separate.
Completely separate. Mm-hmm.
The powers that be allow them to seep into our society. Look at Texas. 20, 30 years ago, evangelical Christians crept into their school system. We have people putting candles on snowballs. Texas needs educators. I'm sorry, Texas. I'm sorry. When those people were saying that snow doesn't melt, I was in my house like, America has gone downhill. They made us look so bad. They made all Americans look so bad in Texas. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. Those are our people too. They're Americans too, but it shows what happens when you let your society go backwards and you get controlled by people who have an agenda.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with our government and what will always be wrong with our government.
Yeah.
And any government that does shit like ours, they have an agenda and they're going to go after that agenda and they're going to suck that dick and stick their hand in that pocket with some money in it and whatever else they got to do.
And war makes money.
Now, you want to suck dick for a good agenda, I'm okay with it, but it's not usually the case. It's about money. It's always about money. So.
And war makes money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The
U.S. has profited off of so many wars we've stuck our noses in. And honestly, the only war we really should have stuck our nose in was World War II.
Absolutely.
The rest of them was a profit, and we stuck our nose in where it didn't belong.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and yeah. You guys can get mad at whoever. I don't care. I'm ex-Army. Be mad at me all you want. I don't care. I know it's true. So.
It's a fact that even Nixon prolonged the Vietnam War for after the election. These are things, and the record is, I think it was like 20,000 extra Americans died in that time. Yeah. I just recently heard the statistic, and I was like, you gotta. And these are people that have the long past, and I'm still mad.
Yeah,
and I'm still mad. And Nixon's passed, and I'm still mad.
And they say, "Oh, you're gonna go fight for your country." No, you're fighting so we can make some money off of somebody. We're going to sell arms and we're going to stir up shit and then we're going to make money. And that's what they do. So
my brother, who was the real life Steve Urkel, came back like somebody you don't even, people don't even look him in the eye anymore. He's so hard now. He did 10 years in Iraq. It's like a prison sentence, but he did 10 years off and on in Iraq. He did his full 20 years in the military. And he's nowhere near, he was soft. And I wouldn't step to him now, and I'm not scared of much. I wouldn't step to him at all. He is hardened now, So.
And it's a shame what those conditions can do to you. I mean, my goodness.
Come back all kinds of fucked up, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
All right, you two. We've been going almost 2 hours, so. Will, what do you got going on? Since you came and saved my ass today and gave her for me to talk to because I don't know shit.
So hi, I'm Godless Sewing from the Godless Sewing channel. Every Thursday, Jen from Jen's Little Corner and I do the What the Fuck stream. And we just, we talk about life. We do the part for course where we judge people, we judge ourselves and everything else in between. I'm usually on Purple Rhymes with Orange on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And Purple also does a stream Midnight in America every Thursday at midnight in America, but it's 10 o'clock on the West Coast.
So. Right. Yeah, midnight Central Time.
Yeah, I'm strictly West Coast. It's a second to last time zone on Earth. Got to represent.
All right, lady, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, B, and it was good to be here with you again. Will, and so
love having you on.
Thank you.
So I'm just usually a guest on other people's shows, but you can find me somewhere everywhere. You can find me at I'm on Twitter at Mandy0904. You can find me at anywhere you can find Black Non-Believers. We have a YouTube channel with previous content from events. And I usually post my appearances. I'll be speaking with the Prairie State Humanist on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So, and I'll be speaking about women of color beyond belief, the demographic, as well as the event that we have coming up in September. So hopefully, if you follow me on Twitter, you can find that information.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So what
Thank
I have
you.
going on is, so from now on, to my beautiful followers in the chat, just so you guys know, every Monday I will do something like a BLM equality, something to do with the fucked up shit, racism, whatever in the United States. I don't care if it's about the school system or, color of skin or your gender or whatever. I'm going to do something about that every Monday, and that will be 8 p.m. Eastern time. Every Wednesday, I'm going at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be doing the drunk atheist, or as I call it, the drunk or not so drunk atheist history. That is not just for atheists. If somebody has a Christian friend that wants to come on, it's about history. I really don't care. I just didn't like DAH coming out. Duh, sounded better. And every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I will be doing a open mic. Anybody can come on, talk about anything you want. I don't care as long as you're respectful to each other. You know how I roll. I don't care. Say whatever you want. And just so you guys know, these two next Monday are going to be on my stream again, just to let them know that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. If I could have you guys back, that would be awesome. You're welcome on any of my streams, both of you. You know I love you to death.
Thank you, B.
And
Yes,
thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And thank you, everybody in the chat. And we will catch you guys next week. And maybe I'll see one of you guys Wednesday or Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Peace out,
All right.
everybody. Take
Bye-bye.
care of one another and be equal.